So I think we are good to go. Sorry about that. I just had to make sure that at least we get to record the session before we proceed. So as I was saying and explaining, we shall be looking at web design, and we shall also be looking at HTML, the basics of HTML. So so for today's agenda, we shall be looking at, I'll first begin with the session 2 recap, just to take you through what we were able to look at last time for about 2 minutes to ensure that our members haven't forgotten some of the basics that we discussed and what we covered in session 2, because I think what we covered was very, very crucial and very important. Because at the end of the day, all the sessions that we are bringing for you as members of the ICT Club are building blocks for you to be able to build a foundation of knowledge that we shall be using in the more advanced, our more advanced sessions. So it will be very important, and it would show that you people are really interested if you take the time to understand some of those concepts that we shared in session 1 as well as session 2. Because I understand some of you were not maybe aware of the program that we are running every weekend on Saturday at 3 p.m. But in case you might have missed session 1 and session 2, please take time to go to YouTube and search for those particular sessions. So you can simply type in ICT Club session 1 or ICT Club session 2 on the Kawa platform on YouTube. So I really encourage you to do that in case you missed out session 1 and session 2. So after my recap, I will introduce you to some basic web design concepts that I think every ICT Club member should be able to know and to be able to understand and comprehend at the end of the day. Because web design as a field is quite broad, and we think that at the end of the day, you should also be able to have this skill set and this knowledge that is really important to supplement your ICT. So I'll also share with you, I'll introduce you to HTML and share with you what we call Visual Studio Code, which is basically an IDE. And if you don't know what an IDE means by now, that means you missed our first session. So an IDE is simply an integrated development environment that we use to build programs, write programs. It makes the process of writing programs or the process of coding, it makes it easier and more entertaining. Let me just say it that way, more fun. So I'll just show you a bit of the basics, some of the basics of VS Code, because it is what we shall be using for the rest of the languages that we shall be looking at, JavaScript, PHP, Java, and so on. So that's why I wanted us to introduce it in our first session, session of HTML, such that when we go to CSS, we don't have to learn any other IDE. We don't have to maybe start struggling with other technologies. Yes, because we encourage exploring. That is part of life, but we will try to be a bit more specific here because we want people to be able to understand these things at least in depth. And if you get to understand one feature, it will be important. Better than nothing.
No, just I did recruiting. And I looked at the report.
Please mute.
They are commenting. Seneca, that's which class you're commenting?
Okay, sorry about that. I think Mr. Morris has to mute because it really disturbs.
Sorry for apologies.
Oh my God, I have to mute him again. So Mr. Morris, please mute. Please mute. You're inconveniencing the rest. Sorry about that. I'll just try to proceed. So I will show you a brief demonstration of how we can build a program in HTML. And I'll also be able to show you how we use VS Code, some of the basics, what are the plugins that you might need, what are some of the settings, the default settings that you're supposed to use in VS Code before you kick off, before you start writing your program. Then lastly, as usual, just like it is here, part of our culture, in our sessions, we always have a question and answer session where I get to interact with all the participants that are available, and we get to share maybe what their experience has been in relation to the presentation, what they didn't understand, so that I can be able to clarify what were they able to build throughout the week, because today I was expecting some of the learners to share with me some of the things they were able to build in Scratch, because we took quite a lot of time last weekend as we were looking at the block coding concept, the notion of block coding. So I hope to hear from some of the learners what they were able to build, what they discovered, and so on. So I'll allocate about 20 minutes for that particular question and answer session. So what did we look at last time? So I think those who were a bit active in our last session, you can actually be able to tell from just the images at the bottom of my slide, you can be able to know that these are some of the things that we looked at last time, and you might be able to identify what each actually represents. So for those who were not able to take part in that session, our introduction to Scratch and block coding, we looked at what block coding is, and we were able to also look at the advantages of block coding. And like I said, those who missed out this is very important, and you need to go and look out for session 2 of the ICT Club presentation, the ICT Club presentation session 2 on YouTube. We shared this with the patrons, and they should be able to share this with the rest of the learners that might want to have a look at that. I don't want to be to backtrack and spend a lot of time on what we already covered. So we're able to look at how you can actually build a program in Scratch. And I was able to show you guys a very simple program. At least I think there were 2 of them. I was able to show you a program in Scratch. And we also mentioned that we also have another programming language, not necessarily a programming language, but another platform that we use called PictoBlocks, which is based on Scratch. And I was able to illustrate how we actually use the Scratch interface. And I hope that some of our learners were able to learn something new in that session, because that is the main goal of us taking the time every Saturday to be here. So lastly, I was able to show you at least a small example of why block coding is important. And I was able to introduce you to the BBC Microbit. Though I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but at least I wanted our learners to be able to understand why we need to learn block coding. So that's why I brought in that element of the microbit just to show you that actually block coding is also important, that we use it even as people who are a bit experienced to some extent. We still use block coding, to program microbits, to program some of these Raspberry Pis, because with Scratch you can do that. And now with PictoBlocks, you can be able to program something using artificial intelligence, using Python. Something that needs some sort of a program that acts in such a way that it replicates some of the elements that human beings have, elements of thinking, elements of being a bit creative, learning. So PictoBlock does that very well, and we will see that in our PictoBlock series when we reach there. And like I mentioned to you in our last session, in our first session, that the purpose of these sessions is basically to introduce you to some of the technologies that we, unfortunately, I think our members have to mute. Please mute. I can't keep on muting everyone. When you're joining, please mute. Okay. So there's something I wanted to share as well. I think I always share this in all my sessions, starting from session 1, session 2, and today I'm bringing it back because I think it is that important. And that is basically, how do you design and plan your program? But obviously we went in depth about this in session 1, but I always bring this up because of something I explained that some of our learners, some of our software developers as well, even at a professional level, when you're beginning, when they want to program or write a software or to begin a project, they always just go to their computers and start right away, start the coding without necessarily, without going through the process of planning and designing what they are actually going to build, which we think is actually a very bad habit in this field of programming and in this discipline of software development. So we believe that once the learners get to understand this particular slide and make sure that at least they get to understand the basic stages that you need for you to start writing a program or designing a project at your school, it would be very important and it would be very beneficial at the end of the day. So I'll just run through it in about 1 minute. So you begin with an overall goal, just like I explained. Then you go to the requirements and limitations stage where you consider what are the requirements for me to write this program successfully, or for me to finish this project successfully. Do we have a time limitation? Do we have a storage limitation for our project? Do we have a financial limitation? So this is very important. I explained it in all the previous sessions, and I will do the same in our next session, because until I feel like I reach a point where I know that for sure our members are well versed with this particular slide. So we always have the design, the stage where we design mockups and pseudocode. We looked at that in the first stage. You have to draw out some sketches, and you see me doing that in our demonstration, where we share with you some sketches, and I will be able to show you that even if in this particular demonstration, I will just be coding, but I will show you that we actually begin from the mockup stage. I'm not just coding from my head, but I do have a mockup that I'm following. So we also talked about pseudocode. I think pseudocode, it was very clear. I showed that, I used an example to explain that, that pseudocode is also important to simply outline your code in plain English, maybe even your language, local language, if you can. You can just outline what you're going to be coding in a generic way, without following any programming rules, syntax, or anything like that. Simply outline, and then you proceed from there. Then obviously you have to search for helpful technology that you might use in the program, in your project. Like today, I'll be using VS Code. I've already reached that particular stage of searching for helpful technology. So I began with my overall goal. For example, if I'm to use this session as an example, that I wanted to pass on some of the basics of HTML to the learners, I consider the requirements. For example, the time frame limitation, and the requirement that I will have to show these to show the examples in real time. So I have that already planned out. I've already gone through this stage. So the limitation of time, I consider that. Then I had to design some mockups. I have my own mockups and the pseudocode as well. And then I decided to use VS Code as my technology, what will be helping me in my programming today, in my demonstration. So I'll be able to show you that we can actually write the program, and I will write the program with you when I reach the demonstration stage. Then we shall be able, I'll be able to show you that we can test and troubleshoot the program, though I've already done that, because I wouldn't want to come here and share with you some code that does not work. So I've already tested and gone through the process of troubleshooting my program. So obviously I'll be able to finish my program, and you should be able to do the same for all the projects that you'll be working on. Even if you don't get the chance to participate maybe at the NCC, you should be able to understand at least this particular process. It's only 7 steps, and they are all very clear and they're very basic. So what will you be able to learn today? So before we even proceed, why are we here today? What should we be able to take away at the end of this session? Why are we taking the time to be here this afternoon? So we shall be able to learn some of the basic concepts, like I said, under web design. You'll be able to learn some of the basic terminology that we use. Obviously, we cannot finish all the terms under web development and web design, but at least there are some main ones that even the layman should be able to understand and should be able to know, right? Because they are the foundation of the rest. Yeah. So we shall be able to you'll be able to see how to design and code the website using HTML. As you understand, HTML is also actually broad, but at least you'll be able to see how you can at least write your first program, your first hello world program. So that at the end of the day, you get to also use the computer. Even after this session, you can get to write a small website, to design a small website on your computers, even at school there. So finally, like I said, I will also show you, even as part of my demo, I will show you what VS Code is and how we actually use it to write programs. So let us jump to the web design concepts. But before even I get into the web design concepts, I want to share with you what I think is my most important slide in this particular presentation. And as you can see from the animation on my screen, this is why we are here today. That at the end of the day, if you want to develop something, you want to develop something that is really fun, something that people find engaging, something that people find interesting. You don't want to design something that people find boring. It doesn't matter how efficient your program is, or your website in this case, for example, if I'm to use that as an example. Yeah, if you, it doesn't matter how your website does its things, or whether it executes at a high speed, or it has some other cool features in the back end, as long as the users find it really boring, or they find it uninteresting at all, it doesn't serve its purpose at the end of the day. So that's why today I'm introducing to you these basics of web design, so that you don't get to a point where your users feel this way. Maybe you're designing an e-commerce store and you want people to be visiting that particular store to buy products. You really don't want a user to go there. Maybe he's looking for something, they can't find it, and at the end of the day, they get to behave like our brother here on the screen. They find it really boring, and they end up even dozing. So that is what we are trying to avoid by introducing you, our dear members, to this particular notion of web design. So web design, what do we mean by web design? So in web design, just to give you a brief definition, a basic definition, web design is the process of creating a website that focuses on aesthetic factors like layouts, the user interface, and other visual imagery in order to make the website more visual appealing and easy to use, just like I've explained using the previous slide, as you saw, or one of our users was really bored. So by aesthetic, we simply mean, how do we beautify our website in an artistic way? How do we design it in such a way that it is appealing? So this is what we are going to be looking at today. And as we are looking at the web design, you will see that the term layout actually comes out very often, that layouts are very important. You have to be able to design your website in such a way that each of the features that is on your website is pre-planned. In other words, when you're designing your mockup, for example, you need to design your web layout to show where for example, where is a particular image going to be? Where is your heading going to be? Where is, maybe if you're designing for a company, where is your logo going to be? So that's why layouts are very important. And you will be seeing how we actually do that. So for the user interface, we talked about this. I defined some of these terms in the first session. User interface is simply what the user gets to see. Yeah, because you understand programs have what we call the front end and the back end. So the front end is what the user gets to see. Sometimes what we call the user interface, what the user gets to interact with. Yeah, so then for the visual imagery, we simply mean how are we going to lay out our videos, our audio, our pictures, our text? How are we going to actually lay that out on our particular website? So in web design, I think I've shared with you an image there at the bottom that you can see clearly. We consider many things. I've talked about layouts, web design. Obviously, when you're designing a website, the end goal is for you to be able to share it with other people in most cases. So the internet is involved. So we have a programming language called CSS that we shall be looking at in our next session. And you have to consider things like media, content, and content management systems, and so on. So this brings us to our next slide. So in web design, we often sometimes people normally consider this, they normally use the term interchangeably to mean graphics design or something like that. But there are two different disciplines, not entirely different. They share common elements. And I will also, I think we have this planned, we shall have a graphics design session where I simply talk about what graphics design is and how different is it from other disciplines and so on. But you'll find that in our web design, we normally require this discipline of graphics design because we deal with a lot of content, we deal with a lot of images, videos, and so on that might need some editing and some improvement, enhancement. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to share with you this particular slide to show you that part of web design is actually graphics design, though they are actually separate disciplines. So as a member of the ICT club, I just think that it is very imperative for you to be able to discern the difference between what web development is and what web design is. So in the normal, in our normal community or environment, working environment, you find that people use these terms interchangeably. Someone might say, I'm a web developer, for example, and maybe when they are just a web designer, but they don't know the difference. So that is the so this is the advantage of being part of the ICT club, that you get to learn some of these things that some other people may not be aware of, even professionals. You find that someone might be using these terms in a way that is not appropriate, but that's because they simply lack the awareness of the difference. So that's why I think I should be able to share with you the difference so that you don't make the same mistake. So by web development, we simply mean, in general, that the tasks that are associated with developing websites for hosting via the internet or the internet via the World Wide Web. So we should be able to know that web development simply encompasses everything that maybe a software developer or a programmer does on the web or on the internet, for example. Yeah. So some people might consider even cloud computing to be part of web development. Yeah, but when we talk about web design, we don't mean all those facets of web development. We simply mean, how do we actually design a website in an appealing way, in a way that is appealing for the user? Yeah, though web development actually also consists of web design. So web design is sort of, you can think of it as a subset of web development. So some of the things that we might consider under web development are obviously designing a website, like I've mentioned. Web design is part of web development. Creating the website, writing it, for example, designing a database. So designing a database is also part of web development. So that's why I've made sure that as we cover our website development series, we shall also have the database management. Please mute when you're joining. Please mute. Thank you. Mr. Peterson, please mute. Thank you very much. So, just to proceed, so we shall be looking at database design as well as part of this series. And then I'll be able to show you how we host a website when we are done with the CSS, JavaScript, the PHP, designing our websites, MySQL, and so on. I'll be able to show you how we host a website. And please remember that all that will be part of web development and not necessarily web design. So at least at this point, considering the fact that I've explained what web design is and what web development is, we should be able to differentiate between who a web designer is and who a web developer is. Because at the end of the day, as we are learning web development, someone should know who that is. Okay, please mute when you're joining, because it's quite inconveniencing for us to be able to be muting the members every time. So when you're joining, please mute. So sorry about that. Let me just proceed. So I was saying, we should be able to differentiate between what web designer and web developer is. So web designer is someone who simply does web designing, and a web developer is someone who does maybe both web designing and other things. Maybe that is a person who can design a database using PHP, someone who understands the elements of SEO, search engine optimization, someone who understands UI, user interface, maybe development, cloud computing, how to use all these facets of web development, which might not be the case for web designer. Web designer might only be able maybe to do some nice graphics, to design the interface. Maybe they are just a UX designer, a user interface designer, and they don't go beyond that. And in our field of software development, we always have these people. There are some people who have mastered the art of web designing, but when you bring them maybe to database designing, they really don't want to participate because that's not their field of interest, or that's not their field of expertise. So, but though for us here at the ICT Club, we are going to be looking at all these concepts in a broad perspective. We shall show you how we can how we actually do all of these things, how we design the database, how do we begin from zero with no code, with no line of code, and then come up with a very good, beautiful and functional website at the end of the day. Yeah. So for the beginning, for the start, we shall begin with HTML, then we shall move on to CSS, we shall look at JavaScript, and we shall as well proceed to PHP that we shall be using to design, where I'll be showing you how we design databases in detail. So I really want to run through this process of web designing. So I think even from this side, from this particular slide, you can see that for this particular slide, we are using the word web designing to represent web development as well. So I outsourced this particular slide because I wanted to make a point that you might, maybe from other resources, from other sources, you might find someone saying, this is how web development works, this is how web design works, and they may have created the content without considering the difference, but at least now you know that there's a difference between web design and web development, though it is a bit subtle, but there is. So here we're using the word interchangeably. You could say that this is also the process of web development because you have to consider some of these things when you're designing. So for step one, project definition is very important. I will just try to summarize because these each element that you see here, each stage is actually very broad. There are many tools you actually use at each stage. There are many things you might have to consider. There's a lot of terminology for each particular stage, though I will just try to highlight and I will move on to the next slide. So for project definition, we simply have to actually outline why are we designing them? Why do we need to start the project in the first place? What problem are we trying to solve? What are the main objectives of our project? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? Then project scope. Obviously, maybe you would like to solve a certain big problem, but considering that the limitations and the environment and some other factors, you have to actually outline and be clear, get some form of clarity of what part of that problem are you going to solve, and how far are you going into the problem, because some of these problems that we solve, especially with software, are very broad. You might want to solve everything, but that is not possible and it may not be feasible. So you might have to limit your scope to say, maybe I just want, let me say if you had the goal, I'm just going to use Facebook as an analogy. Maybe you want to connect the world. Yes, that is nice, but how are you going to connect the world? So you can connect the world using an application, and that would be your scope. That for me, as a way of connecting the world, I'm just going to be using the Facebook. I'm going to create a Facebook app that people can actually use to communicate, to text. Yeah, though there are other ways that people can connect. Though for you as a developer, you've decided to develop the application, the website. Yeah, so that would be a very good example of that. So then we'll move on to wireframes and site architecture. You need to, like I said, that particular stage, I think stage 3 of our design and plan stage is very important, where we design mockups and we design pseudocode, we design architecture. Architecture is also part of that stage. where you actually imagine how your website will look like before you even start coding, before you even get to even switch on your computer. You always have to go through that stage. I think it is very important, and it's a very important stage because it sets the pace for the rest of the project. So the visual design is also important. I think the mockups are also part of visual design. The graphics are important. How are you going to be designing the graphics? So site development is very important as well. You always want to consider continuous development for your site as you grow the site, and as you sorry about that. There's some noise in my background. Sorry about that. So for site testing, I think I talked about testing in our first stage as well. That testing stage is very important. Then you have to consider launching the website, or launching the application that you're building. Because at the end of the day, people have to get to use your website for you to be able to know what are its limitations, what are some of the errors that you're getting from the particular site that you're developing. Then, of course, site maintenance. When people start using your website, at the end of the day, you need to maintain the site. You need to be able to rectify maybe some issues that users are facing based on their feedback. You should also be able to iron out some errors that people are getting from the website. So this is just a summary of the design process that I think is very important. So I want to share with you some of the tools that you can start with. I really don't want to share the complicated ones, because sometimes when we share most of these things on the screen or with the users in the first place, they end up not trying out any of them because there are so many. Yeah, but today I just want to share with you 2 of them that I think everyone should be able to at least work out, to start with, be able to start with and design something using these particular tools. So the first tool that I want to share with you is called Dreamweaver. So Dreamweaver is basically an application that serves as both an IDE and the visual interface. In other words, and a visual interface. It has a visual interface that shows you what you're coding in real time. So that's why I think it's very important. It's very good for the beginners as well. I think I've seen some of the patrons sharing it on the WhatsApp group as the learners were actually practicing with Dreamweaver, which made me and the rest of the team at Kawa very happy, because at least we saw that some of teachers really care and they are pushing their learners to actually begin using some of these tools. So then I'll share with you Photoshop as well. Photoshop is very famous. I think most of our learners have heard about Photoshop. I'll just presume that that is the case. But I'll also show you how you can actually get access to this Photoshop and also begin trying out some things. So we need to note that in order to create a winning design, and a winning design, like a winning design is simply, I'm simply using it as a term to refer to a design that is actually appealing to the users, a design that is very effective in ensuring that the users accomplish their goal. For example, on your website. So web designers need to think about their audience. You need to think about your audience, because your audience at the end of the day is what is going to be using your website. So if you want to have a successful web platform, you will need to consider your users, the people that are going to be using, your website. So additionally, we need to consider the fact that our website sometimes can be visited by many people, something like that. You might have a lot of traffic on your website, and how will your website be able to handle that traffic when many people visit your website at a certain point? Just to use that as an example. So web designer has to put all these in mind, because after the web designing stage, you will have to move on to the web development stage, where you have to actually code the website in real time. So you can download the Dreamweaver application. This is the official website, www.adobe.com. You can always go there, because all these that I'm sharing with you today are developed by Adobe, and you should be able to go there and download Dreamweaver. Even if you get the trial version, it would be nice for you at least to start out with that and install it for the learners, for example, or use it yourself and see how it actually works. So at the end of this, I'll show you a small demo of Dreamweaver, how Dreamweaver works, and how the interface looks like. So this is how Dreamweaver looks like. But though this is not a demo, obviously, this is just a slide that I want you to see. So Dreamweaver simply has, on the left, as you can see, just using this as an example, it has a section where you can actually code from. You can actually write your code there, but on the right, at the same time, in real time, in other words, you can be able to see what you're coding. For example, if you change the title of this website from Bootstrap in Dreamweaver, you can see that the title is changing in real time, which makes it a little bit easier for especially our learners who are not very experienced, because when you get experience, you actually don't need that section on the right, because you're sort of speaking a language with a computer. You know exactly where whatever you're coding, and you know where it will go. If you're changing the title, you really know what is going to happen. Yeah, that's why you see today I want to be demonstrating. I want to be prioritizing Dreamweaver because of this particular reason, that at the end of the day, you need to be able to understand what the code actually means, and what you should be able to build a picture in your mind as a programmer, that when I type this, this goes here, this goes here. You sort of have a layout in your mind, that when I put my body here, for example, I'll be able to do my website will look like this, and to have this sort of layout at the end of the day. So Photoshop, I talked about Photoshop. It can be gotten from the same website, from adobe.com. So these are just some screens from Photoshop. As you can see, the Photoshop interface accords to you a lot of features. You can use it to resize images. You can crop them out. You can build a lot of graphics with it. That's why I think it is very important that you get some time and add this to your software collection, and you get to think around with it and see what you can actually be able to achieve with this particular software. I think it's very important. People have built businesses just around this particular program, Photoshop, that someone maybe is into the photography business, and they take photos on a wedding or some of these functions. I've seen some of my friends doing this, and they've been really successful simply because they took the time out to learn what Photoshop can do, such that they can insert maybe clients' photos and make them look a bit better at the end of the day. So please, I want to encourage you to go and look out for these. For example, I'm using this slide to show you that maybe you want to edit the background of an image, you want to add certain things, you can be able to do that. So let us look at HTML. I can see we are running out of time because I really want to have the Q&A as well as part of this session. I'll try to speed up a bit. So why do we need HTML to begin with? I already explained that in web development, we have many languages, many programming languages that we use. And in our first session, I actually went through this whole programming language concept, and I explained a lot of programming languages that we use. And I remember telling our members that in HTML, we use HTML for web design, HTML, JavaScript, and so on. So that's why today I'll be bringing you HTML5, at least showing you some of the basics of HTML5, so that you can write a basic program to begin with. So why do we need HTML? HTML, we use this for web design, basically. And I already mentioned that we shall also look at CSS, which we use to add color to our website, and the JavaScript, which helps us to add some dynamic elements to our website, so that our websites don't look boring, which is sort of the foundational problem that we are trying to solve here, that we don't want boring websites. That's why we're bringing all these languages. Then the PHP, obviously, like I mentioned, we shall use that in our web development side, where we actually design databases and connect them to our website, so that our website also gets a chance or gets a location where it can store some of the data. For example, login details, for example, images for the products that will be seen on your e-commerce website. Yeah, so that I think will be an interesting session where we get into database design and database management. Yeah, I think from this image here, you can tell that it sort of summarizes the whole thing, that that our website or our application or any program that has an interface has two sides. the front end and the back end. On the front end of our website, we shall be using HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript to be able to show, to beautify our website. HTML to include the text, CSS to add some color, and then JavaScript to add dynamic elements. Then the PHP will be at the back end. The back end is that part of your program that users cannot actually see. It's sort of the background where we store the data and all that, where other programs run, but when these programs don't necessarily have an interface. So I'll use an example of this. This is a website that is, I'm just going to use a real life example of a website that some of our members are working on. So here is the website designed in basic HTML plus a little CSS, though it's mostly HTML. As you can see, the website is a bit dull. We have only the little color there on our headings, on the mission, maybe vision for this particular company. Though this company is obviously just a demo company that I'm using to pass on the idea that we need these languages, we need HTML, we need CSS, because someone would ask, why should I learn all of those? Why do I have to waste time getting into PHP and JavaScript? So I have to make this relevant at the end of the day. So this is a bit boring. I think we can all agree. Though it can serve as website, some people just design their websites in HTML and they get to serve the purpose. Maybe you just want to design a small website that simply talks about your organization, your school, your ICT club, for example. This could serve the purpose. It would look like a document, but it would really serve the purpose because it would still be accessible around the world in case you hosted it. It would be very important. It is a good start. But here I want to share with you how you can actually have the website in case you include some other features, in case you get to add your CSS. So I'm sharing with you this small video just to illustrate some of these points that this is now. For example, if we say that if we assume that the website was complete, this is someone who has actually added some CSS and some JavaScript. I think you can see some dynamic elements in this particular slide, where when someone has even the capacity to hover over objects and the objects look a little bit dynamic. So that person has actually included some JavaScript there, and wherever you see the color, that person has included CSS. So you can create a lot of stuff with this. Just wanted to illustrate the point. And that's why today we've come here to actually begin this journey of web development. You can actually add, as you can see on the screen, you can actually add Google Maps as well. Maybe you have a business, it's located somewhere. You can add that in HTML. Using HTML, you can add that, and you can beautify that particular section of the Google Map. Using CSS, you can edit it out, try to make sure that it is displayed in a very nice way. So I think you can agree with me that this is more appealing than the first slide that I showed you of this particular website. And this is all I'm trying to achieve in sharing with you some of these things. So just to go through HTML briefly before I go into the demo. So HTML as an acronym simply stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So whenever you hear HTML, we are simply trying to abbreviate this particular word, Hypertext Markup Language. So it is a standard markup language for creating web pages, and it describes the structure of a web page, as I'll be showing you in my illustration. It also consists of a series of elements that we shall be looking at, elements that we normally call tags that I'll be showing you in my demo. And these HTML elements simply tell the browser how to display the content, because at the end of the day, here as web designers and web developers, we are looking at how will our content be displayed to our end user to ensure that we achieve what we want to achieve, and the user also gets to benefit from our website. They get to see the value that the website is delivering. Is it maybe communicating a message? Is it a video platform where people can go and watch some videos? I think if you guys, as users, all of us, I think here, have visited many websites, and we know that these solve some common problems in our society. But at this level, we don't want to just stop at being users. We also want to be creators. Can we also solve a certain problem using a website? Can we design it ourselves? Can we as well make it appealing at the end of the day? So these HTML elements or label pieces of the label pieces of content, such as a heading, a paragraph, and so on. So we normally call them tags, and I think it will make a lot of sense when I start the coding itself. So I talked about the mockups. Please, the mockups are very important at stage 3 in our design process. So even the program I'm going to use is also going to have something like this, a mockup, a sketch, a small sketch of your website. For example, here I'm bringing this back. It was from slide 1, but I think it is important at this particular stage for me to share it with you that you need to sketch out your website. You need to design it in such a way that when you reach the coding stage, you know where all the elements are going to go beforehand. Even if you need to make some changes, there will be slight changes. But when you have, you already have a framework. Yeah. If we am to use the example of construction in a construction context, if you're a builder, even if you have the best cement and have the best bricks and the best builders in the world, you don't just jump in. You don't just start laying out the bricks and building, coming up with a building, or even if it's a small house. You need a plan. You need to know where each brick is going to go. How is the house going to look like? Do you need some additional materials? Do you need metals, for example? Will you need glass? So you need to make all these plans before you even start putting any brick in the ground, before even people start digging or touching anything on the site. You need to have a plan. And that's why some of the architects in that industry are well paid, because they simply do this job of designing. It is very important. It's a very important stage. So I can't emphasize that enough. So this is another example of a mock-up that I showed in the first session. So here's another mock-up of our friend here who was trying to design a sports online store. So he really took some time to design and to show where all the elements will be, where his navigation menu will be, where people will be able to click in case they want to log in, where the search bar will be, and the rest of the features that you wanted. Mr. Rogers, you may have to mute when you're joining. Thank you very much. So this is the last example, I think, for the store, music store. Someone did the same. The person designed this and decided that my cart will be here, my account will be here, my logout button will be here, my artists, all the artists will be listed here. The popular tracks will be at this particular location on the left. And I really want to encourage you to get into this practice of designing websites prior to coding them. Yeah, because as you understand, as I explained, that some people think this is not important at all. They simply go to their computers and start developing the site without any plan, really. And at the end of the day, they become frustrated when they realize that this is a very relevant stage, that you need to have a plan before you go out there and try to build something. So just to get a bit technical, because at the end of the day, we want this session to be a bit practical and not just theoretical. So just to get a bit technical, to introduce you to HTML as a language, as a markup language, I just want to explain a few features from what we call the basic HTML web structure. So when you're beginning your program, as you'll see, I'm going to demo this in my VS Code. When you're beginning your program, you need to understand the basic web structure that we use in HTML. That HTML uses tags, what we call tags, the elements I was explaining. So these elements simply help our browser. When we run our program in a browser, the browser should be able to tell, to get the instructions from you as a programmer, that this is what I'm supposed to display at a particular moment, at a particular section. Yeah, so to do that, we use these elements we call tags. So for a tag to be complete, or for something to be considered a tag, it has to have what you're seeing there on my screen on one of the tags, what we normally consider as the less than and greater than sign. I think that's the best way I can express it. So you can see, like on the doc type, our first line of code, I'm just sharing with you a simple program here that someone shared, that someone built, a very elementary program. That on the first line there, we have the doc type tag. So you can see every tag here on that particular slide has a less than and greater than sign. So on the second line, we have the HTML tag, we have the head tag, we have the title tag, the body tag, and the paragraph tags, where you see the P and the H1 as well. Though I'll show all of these in my demo. So when you're designing something in HTML, you always have to know what a tag does, what is its purpose to begin with. So when someone says, for example, if someone was in this case sort of dictating and says maybe create an HTML tag, what it simply means is that get your HTML, get the word HTML and put it in the less than and greater than sign. And then if that tag, though we are getting a bit technical here, So if that tag has is supposed to be what we call a normal tag. A normal tag in HTML has what we call an opening tag and a closing tag. As you can see, I'm using the HTML tag on line 2 as an example, in that you have to actually put the word HTML in the less than and greater than sign, and then you should be able to also put it in another tag at the bottom of this slide. For example, I'm just using it as an example. At the bottom of this slide, where you have a / HTML and greater than sign. So I think this will be much better when we go to the demonstration, so that I can show you this in real time and you get to understand it in depth. Okay. So I'll stop sharing my screen briefly and go to my VS Code. So I hope that you're able to see my VS Code on the screen, right on the screen there. So I'll be sharing with you. So this is a fresh installation of VS Code. So when you download the VS Code from Adobe, and then you reach a point where you've actually gone through the right installation steps, you'll be able to see the screen of mine, the welcome screen. I hope everyone can see my cursor. So on the welcome screen, VS Code is simply telling you some of its features. Obviously, they use it as a way of welcoming you and telling you about some of the cool stuff that you'll find on this particular IDE. So on the VS Code interface, we have a lot of stuff that you can do with this interface, depending on your experience with it and depending on what you're trying to build. But I think I'll just begin with the basics. So on the right here, we have what we call the Explorer icon. So the Explorer icon is what you'll be using in case you wanted to add a folder. And when I click on it, I think you can see it has this tab that says open folder. And this applies to the latest version of VS Code. In case you have the latest version of VS Code, you'll be able to see some of these features. So you also have the search bar. In case you want to search for something in your code, you'll be able to use that search button. In case you want to search for a certain piece of code or a certain word, in case you're dealing with a lot of code, many lines of code, you can always use that search bar. So I also have the extensions section, or the plugins, we call them, sometimes we call them extensions, sometimes we call them plugins. So you can use, some people call them VS Code applications. So there are many terms, but I think plugin is a more formal term. So when we mention VS Code plugins, we simply mean the extensions that you can add. I think if you've been using the Google Chrome browser or the Foxit web browser, you can see that they also have their own extensions. For example, you can have an ad block extension, but in this case, we shall be using extensions that actually help us in the programming process. So here, I'll just have, for example, as an example, I can install this extension called Live Server that I think our learners and our members should be able to install as well at the end of the day, because Live Server helps you to create that effect of Dreamweaver. For example, because by default, VS Code does not come with a visual feature where you can actually see your website being coded in real time. But people have come up with an extension that you can actually use and be able to extend the capacity and the capabilities of VS Code. So that's basically what plugins do. They simply extend the capabilities and what you can achieve with VS Code. So as you can see here, I have the uninstall button. I've already installed LiveServe on my in my VS Code. But in case you hadn't, in case I hadn't, it would be installed. So it's as simple as that. And once you install, your LiveServe will be able to work. So I just want to go through the whole process, at least a basic process of someone in which a process where someone can go through to write a basic HTML program, considering the basic HTML web structure. So in case you reached your VS Code, you've installed it, you're on the screen, just like I'm on the screen right now, you can begin by actually, you can create a new file here. You simply click on the file tab, on the main menu, on the extreme left, and then you can go to new text file. So you can go to new text file, because as you understand, we are going to be using text. We are going to be using texts to code our program. So here, by default, VS Code will bring it to you as an untitled file. So the title of this particular file will be untitled. For example, in my case, it is untitled 1. So for me to give it a definite title and to make sure that VS Code understands what I'm trying to create, so that it can give me some of those nice features the nice features that it has that helps in the programming process of, for example, HTML. I have to specify what my file has, which language I'm going to be using to code. If it is Java, I have to save my file as a Java file. If it is HTML, I have to save my file as an HTML file. So in this case, I'll just go here to File, then I'll go to Save As. So when I go to Save As, I can give my program a very nice name, maybe first program, can be anything, or first website or project or whatever name you might prefer. Then instead of saving this, saving my file as a plain text file, I will have to save it as an HTML file. So I simply click on this down arrow, then I will look for HTML somewhere here. So I think you can see it right here. So this is HTML. So you have to make sure that this file is saved as an HTML file. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do that, you will see that some of the features, you won't be able to utilize some of the features and advantages that VS Code might give you in the programming process or on your programming journey. So you have to save this. I will save this on my desktop. In this case, so you can always create a folder and save it there. But for me, for a start, for illustration purposes, I'll just save it on the desktop. As you can see, immediately I save my program, the title changes, and VS Code explicitly shows you that this is a .html file. It shows you the extension for HTML files. So if I was, for example, programming in JavaScript, it will be JavaScript, it will be .js. But in this case, I'm using HTML. So I'll try to build a simple basic program to replicate what I was showing you in the slide. So to begin this, you can begin with the doc type. I think if you've noticed, maybe some people have not noticed, but let me try to delete this just to show you. So immediately I begin coding on line 1. VS Code as an IDE simply shows me, immediately tries to help me out by showing me what potentially could be some of the code I can type on line 1. So it is already showing me that I could type maybe a doc type, I could put the A tag, I could put some other tags that we haven't covered in this particular session, but at least we can see that on line 1, it is showing me our doc type. So when you're beginning an HTML program, you always want to include your doc type tag. So I think you can see my syntax there. It simply has an exclamation, the word doc type and HTML. So why do we need it in the first place? Why do we need a doc type? So the doc type simply tells the browser as it begins to maybe execute your program, it tells the browser that, hey, this is an HTML program, or this is a web program. This is HTML. We're trying to code HTML here. So I want you to interpret this program as an HTML program. So the website will be able to interpret that as you've instructed as a programmer. So we think this is very important as well, that you have to include this. So moving on, just to show you that VS Code is really important, and you can use it for HTML, for coding any other language anyway. So I will begin with an HTML tag, simple HTML tag. And as you can see, if you've noticed, the VS Code IDE simply auto-completes this particular tag. All I had to do was to type the word HTML. So you will notice that as we move on, we have what we call self-closing tags, and then self-closing tags, and then normal tags. Normal tags, like I explained, have the opening tag, as you can see on my screen on line 3. I think I'll try to zoom this out. Some people may not be able to see it. I hope it is a bit more clear now. I think that is better, yes. So with HTML, like I said, we always use tags. And in this case, I've typed my HTML tag on line 3 in my VS Code. And the beauty with VS Code is that it colors most of your tags. It makes sure that at least your tags look a little bit better. So this would be the same experience if someone was building this, for example, using Notepad or any other basic text editor. So that's why I'm actually not promoting, but I'm encouraging people to use this. That it makes it very simple, especially if you're beginning. In case maybe you've forgotten to close the tag, VS Code can help you to auto-complete the tag. So when you're coding in VS Code, it's always good to organize your code as well. You should be able to indent, what we call indenting, your tags based on where you want to put them. For example, when you open your HTML tag, because it is the first tag you have to open in case you want to build a website, in case you want to build something that is web-based in this case. So I will begin with the simple tag. As you saw in our structure, we need what we call a head tag. We need to have a head tag. I'll explain why we need a head tag. Before we even put in anything, we need what we call a head tag. So for the head tag, that's where you see where we can put some other tags, like the title tag, where we can put our meta tags. I'll explain those tags when we reach there. But you have to understand that the head tags is where we put some of the logical tags, tags that may not necessarily do anything in terms of what the user is going to see, but at least they are part of the logic, of the website logic. So additionally, we need what we call a body tag, in case you want to lay out a basic structure. So I'll try to speed up a bit just to accord some time for the questions and answers. Since this is just our introductory session, I won't cover everything, but at least you should go home when you at least understand the basic layout of the HTML web structure. So we have the HTML, the head, and the body tag. So once you have these, I think for anybody that is starting out, you will be able to build something. But you have to keep in mind that you always have to begin with these. I think there are 4 tags. You have to begin with a doc type. You must have an HTML tag, and an HTML tag. The HTML tag must include the head and body tag. So I was talking about indenting from my cursor here, the space here. You always have to indent your code so that it looks nice. You see, if someone typed this, like I showed you in my slide, you may not be able to understand. And even some of our learners, when we're sharing some of these things, they're a bit intimidated when they see something like this. Like they see a lot of symbols, they don't understand what you mean by what you're coding. So when you indent like this, it shows that our head and body tag are actually within the HTML tags. As you understand, in software development, you might be working on a project with other people. Yeah, because normally it's not a single man's sport or a single man's discipline. You normally work with a lot of people. So if if you shared your code when it is messed up with another programmer, they find it really inconveniencing to understand your code. It is very hard. to understand your code because you've arranged it in a bad manner. For example, because sometimes we build programs that go to up to about 5,000 lines of code. Here I have about 6 lines of code, but you can see that if I didn't indent this, you wouldn't see it clearly. Yeah. So here I have only 6 lines, but sometimes you'll find that your website has 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 lines of code, depending on how many pages you have, what is the content on your page, for example. So the process of indenting this content, the content inside another tag, we call it nesting. So that is the technical term for it, that we are nesting the head tag and the body tag within the HTML tag. So the HTML tag then becomes what we call a nested tag. So it becomes a nested tag. So you have to understand that HTML, if a tag actually can hold other tags within it, we consider it a nested tag. So in this case, the HTML tag is nesting the head and the body tag. So I'll try to do some basic things for, in about 10 minutes maximum to make sure that at least we get a chance for the Q&A and we call it a day. So for the head tag, I can nest a title tag here. So the title tag, I think, is self-explanatory. It's simply what we use to give our website a title. So in this case, I will say maybe my title is my website. I'll just make it pretty simple, my website. And then when I type it like that, this particular title will be displayed at the top of the browser. So allow me to actually save this and show you how it will look like in the browser. So let me try to narrow this. So let me try to minimize this and just try to show you in real time how this will look like. So obviously, when you're coding your website, if you don't have, for example, Live Server, I have Live Server on my computer, so I can be able to. My computer will automatically save for me my file. But in case you don't want to keep on saving every single time, in case you want to view your website and you want to run it, sorry, you can go to File and you can select this feature called this tab or this option called autosave. So as you can see, my autosave is already ticked. But in case you wanted the computer to save for you each time whenever you code, so that you don't have to press maybe Control-S to save the program repeatedly, you will have to enable the autosave feature. So, so once that is saved, I can go to my desktop because that is where I saved my program here. As you can see, my first program, I didn't put it in a folder. I can just click on this and run it in a browser. So here's my website. And as you can see, my title here at the beginning. Sorry, I have to share, I think, the browser as well. I have to share my entire screen so that you can be able to see everything that I have right here. So I'm sharing my browser. I think now it is visible. Here, this is my type. This is how my page looks like right now. So I have my title up here. So I use the title tag to include this. So additionally, I want to share the VS Code once again, so that we build the website, and then we shall be able to see it after I've built it. At least we are using the basic blocks, the basic tags, so that we don't have to look at it every single time when I'm coding. In other words, it will be a bit inconveniencing. So I hope you can see my VS Code. Yeah, so I just want to do the basic tags quickly, and then we end the session and go to the Q&A. So for the body tag, in the body tag, basically, its purpose is for you. That's basically where we type whatever a user is going to see. For example, if I went to the body tag and typed, for example, my name, Emmanuel. So on my web browser, we shall simply have that word Emmanuel on the web browser. So whatever we type here is what the user actually sees. If I typed Emmanuel here in the head section, it would be an error in the syntax of HTML, the basic syntax of HTML. That is not the appropriate way of doing this, and probably definitely the user won't be able to see that, because in the head section, like I mentioned, that's where we put our logic. Some of the basic logic that the website might use. For example, that title that I put there, my website. So in case you want anything, images, videos, and audio that you might want to include on your website, you may have to include it in the body tag. But the best way to do this is, for example, using the paragraph tag. So the paragraph tag is simply included in your program using the p tag. So the p tag is not a normal, is a normal tag, sorry, because you have to open it and close it, as you've seen, as you're seeing here. So if I try to separate this, this is what we call a closing tag. So it has less than sign, /, and a greater than sign. So on this other side, this is the opening tag. It simply has a less than and / and greater than sign. So in between this paragraph tag, I can simply put here my paragraph, though I can type a lot of things. I'll just say my name is, for example, my name is Emmanuel. Just to illustrate, because that is what we are going to decide on our web, on the browser. I'm telling my browser that, hey, I want you to display to the user that this is, so that is just to give you a brief example. Then we have, for example, if I'm just going to introduce another tag here, at least the basic ones. So if I wanted to include, for example, another paragraph, for example, let me just see another paragraph saying this is my name. This is my name. So like I said, you should be able to know what you're actually coding and how it will be represented on the browser at the end of the day. So in this case, I've created 2 paragraphs, but in my browser, I know, based on experience, that this particular program won't be able, these 2 paragraphs will be jointed, in other words. So I'll have to introduce, will be joined or concatenated. They'll be together. So in case you want to create a new line, maybe to break, a line. Anyway, I don't know how to explain it, but in simple terms, in case I want a space on my browser, when I run the program, I need to include the break tag. I need to include the break tag in between the paragraphs, so that when I run my program, you'll be able to see my name is Emmanuel at the top, and then the browser will skip a line, and then it will show the paragraph. Unfortunately, I can see that time has gone, but at least I know that when someone is starting out with HTML, they should be able to write their basic program. So I'll just end here for my basic program. I'll just run it in my browser here so that you can see it. So you can, at least for a start, for today, you can be able to create your first web page that simply has, that displays maybe a paragraph that tells a story, especially for our learners in the ICT Club. You should be able to do that using the paragraph tag and using the break statement or the BR statement. So let me just try to run it here, and then we shall go into the Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen once again, share my browser. So I think from here, I'm just going to try to refresh. I am going to refresh out. I hope people can see this. So I've zoomed it out. The space is a bit big, but I hope this makes sense. That I started out with my name is Emmanuel, and the browser was able to display that to the user. In this case, I'm the user because I'm in a browser. And then I use the break statement, create that space between my name is Emmanuel and this name. Yes. So with that, allow me to stop the presentation today. today's presentation and get into the Q&A before we close. I want to invite some questions, some comments. So anything, because we really want to make sure that these sessions are as efficient as possible, so that our learners get the opportunity to share what they planned for the presentation, what they are working on, what we can improve on as well. That is very important. We take that very, very seriously. At Kawa, we want to improve at the end of the day. We want to improve our delivery, we want to improve the way we share and so on and so on. So I want to invite any teacher, any learner, any participant, any parent, please mute our members, please mute. Yeah, so I want to give an opportunity to anyone that wants to share, to say something, that wants to share with us, with the rest of the team and the members from the different ICT clubs around the country, that wants to maybe add on what I've said. So Mr. Sebuwafu, sorry, Mr. Moses, you can speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yes.
My question is about the VS Code. I would like to know which plugin should be installed so that VS Code can autocomplete the tags. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. So just to respond to that, VS Code has inbuilt capabilities or inbuilt features. So the autocomplete feature is part of VS Code by default. So for certain things, you might need plugins, but for auto-completing, you don't need any plugin. It comes as part of VS Code. So for example, it doesn't matter which language you're coding in case you're coding in PHP, you'll see that when you save your file as a PHP file, VS Code simply immediately recognizes that, hey, I have to bring in the features of PHP to help this person out. So they'll be able to complete your code depending on which syntax you're using in PHP. So in this case, we're using HTML as you saw, and I simply had to type, for example, to give it a hint of what I wanted to type, I could type maybe HT, then to simply display for me the options and bring for me HTML, bring for me some other words that begin with H, and I was able to simply press enter, and it was able to show me the rest of the tag. So I think that has been answered, and I hope Mr. Sebuwafu has been able to get value from that. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Moses.
There are some questions which are coming in form of messages.
Oh, in the chat. In the chat. Okay,
yes, yeah.
okay.
Chat.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. So in the chat here, I can see someone is saying, so I request that towards the end of Q&A, I give Mr. Mukalele an opportunity to greet the members and also, okay. Okay, Mr. Mukalele, I think you can use the chance right now. You can say something, Mr. Mukalele. I want to invite you. Mr. Rogers, can you hear us? Mr. Rogers?
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Rogers.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm here at Jinja College. It's Obi's homecoming day, but I've been following.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the session, and just want to encourage the ICT clubs. If you are to be a web developer, you need to learn the coding, the HTML. You cannot call yourself a web developer when you don't know HTML, when you don't know CSS. These days, there are many tools online which can help you to make a website even without coding, but that is not a web developer.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And I hope next time even we shall be on and continue learning the technologies. That's what I want to say for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukalele. We appreciate your feedback and really glad to have you on the platform. So I'll invite other questions, other comments that you would like to share. Any other person that wants to say something?
There's a message, a question from Mr. Opera. He sent us in form of a message.
Okay. Thank you. So Mr. Opera, let me see. Okay, thank you. So I'm trying to find it, but
Okay, maybe he sent it to me or he sent it to everyone, but he said,
think he
thank
sent
you,
to you.
please advise. Yeah, he
Sorry?
was saying, please advise on how to install Visual Code.
Oh, and how to, because I can't see it in my chat, I think he sent to you. So I
Maybe
think,
he sent to everyone.
so for the installation of VS Code, like Mr. Rogers shared, there are many resources that you can use to be able to, resources that can help guide you. Even if you do a simple Google search of how to install Visual Code, you get a lot of guidance from there as well. I think that would be the quickest. Even on the platform that I shared with you, adobe.com, where you'll be able to download this Visual Studio Code. You see that they have a guide section which has all the information that you might need for installation of Visual Code. But I want to recommend a Google search. Please just search for it. And even if you did go through the search and simply downloaded the Visual Code setup, you see that even in the setup, they actually give you the instructions, explicit instructions on how you can actually install it at each particular stage. You see that they will ask you to choose a location where you want your website to be stored. A location where you want your VS Code to be installed. Do you want it to be installed on the C drive, on the D drive? Where do you want it to be installed? In which folder? So it is very explicit, though I can't do it right now because we are sort of run out of time. Please allow me to invite someone from Kaliro who wants to say something.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yes.
I'm really pleased with the presentation. Yeah, this is Damon Benjamin, a teacher at Kaliro High School.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we are really grateful for what you're doing for us. Although we are finding hardships here, but we are trying our best to always attend the online session. It's only that I wanted to know that is a VS Code like free of charge, or there is some installation code that is required after installing them. Thank you so much. We are so grateful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Petro from Kaliro High School. We appreciate the feedback. And just to answer your question, VS Code is part of, you could consider it an open source software. So whenever someone says a software is open source, for example, VS Code, NetBeans, and all these other IDEs. So we mean that you don't have to pay for it to start with, except that sometimes you find that these software companies, for example, Adobe, might have added some extreme feature to VS Code that they feel like someone should be able to pay for example. That's when you find that they have a version that is paid for and then one that is open source. So sometimes you might find that in some of these softwares, you might find Photoshop that is open source and you might find Photoshop that is paid for. Yeah, because it has some advanced features. Yeah, so but in this case, the one on adobe.com, they will give you a free version of VS Code. You don't necessarily need to pay for it at the end of the day, because since you're just starting out, you really don't need to pay for it. You can use, even if there was a trial version, you should use the trial version to start with. You don't have to incur that cost. So I hope that answers the question. So I want to invite Nato as well. Nato, you want to say something? Mr. Nato from Masindi.
Thank you very much, sir. I do appreciate.
Yes.
I've been always also trying to use VS Code when I'm trying to help my students here with the HTML and the CSS.
That is great.
And at least I've seen the students have been following up, and they are also interested even, and they are also well versed with some of those basics which are starting, because I tried my level best to search in different sources to get the idea. So right now we have started something of the ICT club, and we have tried to design something, and they are all following up, and at least they have learned some basics of knowing tags and also knowing some CSS. How do you design a CSS? And also putting the background of the background of your photo. The background of the page. How to change the color, from different colors to different colors, adding there either on the web page. So I thank you so much for this initiative, and Kawa at large. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nato. Like I said, we really appreciate your feedback. And I want to say that the fact that you're taking the time to encourage the learners to pick up these skill sets, the program in HTML and CSS and so on, that's really commendable. And we appreciate your efforts. We appreciate the effort of all the teachers that are putting in, are investing the time and resources to ensure that the learners at least get to participate in this session, but they don't stop there. They actually go on and build something, do something with what they've learned from the sessions, because that's what we are trying to achieve. We really don't want to just come here every Saturday and just talk about these things. We want the learners to actually go back to their computer lab and also be able to build something. Even our teachers, we really want you to be able to build some of these things, to be able to build a website. Can you encourage your learners? I think all of us, I don't know who's that. So everyone should be able to code, to design a basic website at least. And as we were starting this whole initiative, the ICT Club initiative, when we were visiting the schools, we mentioned that we hope that at least we look forward to seeing that every ICT club should be able to have a website. That's why we are making sure that you get to learn this HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, so that you can come up with your website at the end of the day. Now, you don't necessarily have to hire the services of a professional to design for you a basic website. You can do that on your own. Maybe you can, in the club itself, the club can use this as an initiative for learning coding. They can begin from the basic HTML and they can transition to the CSS that I'll be sharing in our next presentation, so that they can come up with a basic club website. So maybe I can visit that site in case it is hosted and say, maybe let us try to improve this image, and let us try to improve how our title looks like based on what they've developed. Because if they don't create anything, then it's hard for us to guide at all. So we want to encourage every teacher and every learner to at least work on something. So last week I shared the Scratch programming concepts, and I hope that at least the learners have access to some of this Scratch on the computers. Maybe the lab attendants have been able to install it for them. So I want to invite Mr. Kamemoko to also say something. I can see your hand is raised. Please, you can ask away.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Now I need to thank you for this session and the work well done.
Yes, sir.
I also need to thank Mr. Mukalere Rogers.
Yes.
He's one of the people I've been following for some time.
Okay.
However, this has been my first session to be part.
Okay.
And I would only request to know how often you hold such sessions. Probably if you have programs that are continuously running.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the question, for asking. So just to give some clarity around what you're asking about your question. These programs are going to be, this particular program of the weekend is going to be very consistent. It's going to be a consistent program. That's why you see even the link we shared with all of you is actually a continuous link. In other words, you don't need to get another link every week for you to be able to attend our session. The link is always the same. It is a continuous meeting, and we shall make sure that at least you guys, or our team generally, the members, the teachers, and the learners get a chance at least to listen to someone every weekend. So it may not necessarily be me, though I'm currently the one supporting. It might be someone else, depending on the suggestions from the teachers, from the learners, in case they want to learn something else, because you understand that we are not experts at everything. So I can't be the expert that is explaining to you everything throughout the program. So at some point, when we find that maybe there's a person who can, for example, explain artificial intelligence better, we shall sort of request that person to come and share with you what they know. So in such a way, we ensure that there's that consistency, in such a way that we are able to engage with you every weekend, every Saturday. We shall be here, and I want to promise you that you have to be assured. Though now, like I explained, we are carrying out the introductory bit of everything. We are trying to introduce to you all these technologies so that we know that at least everyone knows where to get what software from, knows where to get, for example, download Photoshop from. So we want to make sure that at least you are aware of what we shall be covering in depth before diving into each element. Because, for example, if I was to cover just web design, we might cover web design for about a 2-month period if you wanted to perfect in that discipline. You had Mr. Mukalele saying there are actually some technologies, some software, content management systems that actually help you to design a website without even coding, without even writing a line of code. Yeah? So I didn't mention those in my presentation, but they're actually available. So it's a very broad. So each topic that we discuss each weekend is very broad, but we try to at least highlight what is important in that particular concept or that particular discipline. So today I've covered some HTML. Next week I'll also show you some HTML, but I'm also introducing the CSS as well. But I can't cover everything in the one session because that wouldn't serve the purpose of these meetings. We just want to give you the introduction first, and then we shall go in depth after introducing everything. So I hope that answers I hope that answers your question anyway. I hope I've just answered it a bit, though it is a bit brief, but I hope I've summarized the answer to your question. So I don't know whether I can invite another person. Maybe another person is interested, wants to say something as well. Before we close, any questions? Any questions? So I don't know. Let me see. Maybe in the chat. So based on what I'm seeing here in the chat, no one actually has a question. So with that, please allow me to appreciate all the teachers around the country, those that have really taken the time and have made sure that the learners this weekend take at least 1.5 hours to learn a new concept, to learn something that can supplement the ICT curriculum, because we understand our ICT teachers are doing a very great job of making sure that the learners stay informed and they stay educated about ICT. But we are here to supplement on that so that our learners also get to do the practical side of things. Yes, when you learn what a computer is, for example, for the senior ones, when you learn what a hard disk is, what are the primary devices, what are the secondary devices, when you get to learn what a programming language is, what a program is, can you also go to the laboratory for 1 hour and also design a simple program? Maybe can you take it a notch higher? Maybe when you go for holidays, and instead of just spending the weekend maybe watching TV, you can also sit on your computer and code something. And coding at the end of the day, as you'll find for those who will take the interest and start working out some of these things that we share in class, you'll find that it's not a boring discipline. It's actually very entertaining. I personally consider it a hobby. I don't mind spending the entire weekend on my computer designing something because I find it very fascinating, and it helps me sort of improve my creativity and problem-solving abilities, and I find it really interesting. You can take it up as a hobby, even if you don't want to make any money from it. I would recommend that you look forward to doing so. At the end of the day, you can just take it up as a hobby, try to see what capacity, what abilities can a computer accord you, not only you, but also other people. Because when you write a program, at the end of the day, you end up sharing it with others. So with that, let us end the session. And I want to appreciate all the administration, the entire administration of all these schools. Like I can see Izon School, Ginger College, Dr. Bote, all of you. So I think unless Dr. Bote, someone from Dr. Bote, you want to say something before we close?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
My question, I know we came a bit late, but my question is about making these things of HTML. Now, I have always gotten a difficulty in inserting images from those website things. How can I do that?
So for the insertion of images, I was actually supposed to cover that, but as you understand, time, we don't have enough time. 1 hour and a half is not enough for me to introduce the web design and so on. So for the image, in case you're working on a program, you simply have to use the image tag, which is the IMG, is represented by IMG. So you simply type the image tag, and then you have to include a property. Though I haven't talked about properties in this particular session, but we have a property called source, SRC, where you have to include the name of the image that you want to insert, or the reference of that particular image, though I cannot show it to you right now because we ran out of time, but just know that you have to use the image tag. So you can do a Google search about the image tag. Then I'm sure on the website, on whatever website you will go to, they will show you the syntax for inserting an image in HTML. Though I will begin with some of these, I will begin with the tags in our next session. I will show you most of the tags in our next session, because our next session will be purely practical. You'll see that I probably won't come with any. I'll come with maybe like 5 slides, but for about 1 hour and 20 minutes, we shall just be programming. We shall be using VS Code, where I will be showing you how to insert images, how do you insert videos, how do you insert audio, how do you insert, how do you introduce some CSS in your program, so that it's not, doesn't look so blunt at the end of the day. Can you change the color of your heading and so on? So please, we shall share that in the next session, because we have to respect the time of the teachers as well as the learners as well. They might have other activities that they've scheduled for this particular weekend. So with that, I want to appreciate everyone. I want to appreciate you, Mr. Moses, for also being part of the session. And please have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.